What's up, my guys? What's up, my girls? AKA my dear and beloved Danny Flowitz. It's good to be with you one time for the 11 times. I'm your boy, Danny Flow, your favorite podcast teacher. Or if this is your first time listening to the Danny Flow podcast, I would like to be your favorite podcast teacher. I'd like to think that I'm your soon to be favorite podcast teacher. I like to teach, so I teach you things, or as I like to say, Tingz, like how you already philosophize and how you can do it better. Why I think you, my guys and my girls, should strength train, why we should be getting married and becoming parents younger, and why we should all be Catholic. I'm aware that I'm weird, but you like it. So if you're watching me on YouTube, thanks so much for watching. Please like and share the link to the video so you can help me grow my channel. If you're watching and are not a subscriber, please subscribe and let me know in the comments how you found me and what I did to gain you as a subscriber. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, thanks so much for listening. Please share the link to the podcast so you can help me reach more people, and leave a review if you're feeling generous with your time. Okay, cool. In this episode, I'm going to focus more on philosophy and strength training, as the title hopefully suggests. My last two episodes were over an hour long. I'm going to attempt to make this a much shorter episode so that maybe you, my guys and my girls, can consume it all at once and then let me know what you think. But before I get into it, here's an ad on how I started my podcast, and maybe you can start your own. Okay, cool. I'm going to give a little bit of a backstory because I love telling stories. If you follow me on Instagram at Dani_flow, DANI_FLO, for those of you who don't. So if you follow and you watch my stories, then hopefully you noticed that on Friday, January 31st, I started Friday Philosophy as an attempt to teach my followers more about philosophy and how we already philosophize. Well, I didn't keep up with it until Friday, February 21st. I continued Friday Philosophy with about 3 weeks in between, and this time I made an IG post versus a story post. And then I continued on Friday, February 28th with an IGTV, and the plan is to keep it up as an IGTV series. Okay, cool. So now that you, my guys and my girls, are up to speed, I want to break down my first Friday Philosophy even further. So here's what I posted on my IG story. One of the reasons behind my conviction of lifting weights is that it makes other things easier. Pause. This is considered an assertion. Unpause. For example, I woke up early today, or on that day, and squatted 260 pounds, which is heavy for me, light for others, but since that's a hard thing for me to do, especially on a Friday morning when the week has burned most of us out and the rest of the day is easier. Pause. That is considered an argument or reasoning that supports the assertion that I made. Unpause. I can show up to my job and do what's expected of me. I can be a good husband to my wife. I can be a good father to my son. And I can certainly take a few minutes to pray to God and thank Him for these blessings. Pause. All of those specific examples are meant to support the reasoning I gave to support my assertion. And that's it. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, cool. Let's define some terms so we're all on the same page, as they say, the infamous they. What does multiple things, right? So what does reason mean? In this context, if you consult the almost omniscient Google, we have a decent definition. Quote, a cause, explanation, or justification for an action or event, unquote. So I'm giving you, as most people do, an explanation or justification for my conviction of lifting weights regularly. What's a conviction? That's a great question. That, again, according to the almost omniscient Google, is, quote, a firmly held belief or opinion, unquote. So we all have convictions, and we have them because we're convinced they're true, not just because, right? So we have convictions because we're convinced they're true, not just because. So remember that. A conviction is something you're convinced of. So I'm convinced lifting weights makes other things easier, or as I like to say, things. Why? That's a great question. And that's the type of question philosophy focuses on the most. Why? Whenever you ask why, you're probably asking for a philosophical answer, whether you are aware or not. And whenever you answer why, you're most likely giving a philosophical answer, whether you are aware or not. But how am I going to demonstrate or prove this conviction? And here we could say it's obvious. But in philosophy, one of the assumptions we make is that most things, or as I like to say, Tingz, are not obvious, and that the more modest assumption is that most things are not obvious to most people. So the way I demonstrated or proved what I'm convinced about was to point out that lifting weights is hard. A lot of people opt out of it because it's hard. Even those of us who opt in, a lot of times we take it easy on ourselves. And for full disclosure, I'm one of those people. If you listened to my podcast episode about my goals for 2020, I talked about how I've always been real precautious in the gym and I haven't taken any big risk in my training. And now that I've been doing it for a while, I can see how it's been to the detriment of my training. Further, even those of us that opt in a lot of times have a difficult time keeping up because it takes effort. You have to find a gym that you like or buy equipment. If you find a gym that you like, you have to pay a membership. You have to change into your gym clothes on the days that you go training. You have to drive there. You have to do the thing, right? The actual workout. Then you shower and change at the gym or drive back home and shower and change there. And then you go about the rest of your day, all to lift heavy objects for strength and or aesthetic reasons. Therefore, as philosophers say, because most people opt out of lifting weights, and even those who opt in either take it easy or quit, due to the amount of effort, we can say lifting weights is a hard thing, or as I like to say, ting, to do. Okay, cool. So then I strengthened my argument for my assertion by providing an example. So if we consult the almost omniscient Google again, an assertion is a quote, a confident and forceful statement of fact or belief, unquote. So again, a pretty good definition. So I'm asserting lifting weights makes things, or as I like to say, Tingz, easier. I'm confidently stating something I'm convinced of. And remember, I'm stating a conviction, and remember that a conviction is something that you're convinced of, right? We all make assertions and we assert our convictions. We assert that which we are convinced of. Most of us just don't do a good job of explaining or giving reasons for them. Again, because sometimes we think it's obvious why. But if we were to put our philosopher's hat on and we would assume it's not obvious and give reasons at the risk of explaining or stating the obvious, that's what we do. We explain things at the risk of explaining the obvious. So what's my example? On that particular morning, I squatted 260 pounds. That might be easy for others. It's hard for me. I like to think that in addition to the weight that you have on your back when you perform the squat, you're also squatting your body weight, right? That's what makes it difficult. When you do some sort of pressing movement, you're not necessarily pushing your body weight unless you're doing like a push-up or a dip. And when you pull, you're not necessarily pulling your body weight unless you're doing like a pull-up, a chin-up, body weight rows, things like that. But like for a barbell row, for like a deadlift, you're pulling the weight. You're not in addition pulling your own weight. And again, I'm a pretty precautious guy, so the kind of weight that I put on my back could seriously injure me and even kill me if something went wrong. That's another reason some people might opt out of lifting weights altogether. It's not worth those two risks for them, a serious injury or death. But because I was able to do that on that particular morning, and on most particular mornings, I'm able to make it to the gym and lift relatively heavy for myself, right? The rest of the day is kind of easier because a lot of things that I do aren't as physically taxing and I don't have those two risks associated with it. I guess the only thing that I can think of is maybe driving. You know, every time you drive, that's a risk. You could get into an accident, and that accident could lead to serious injury or death. So, in my opinion, driving, even though most of us are careful drivers, driving is a bit of an act of faith, right? A little bit, right? That's a modest claim. Don't come at me for that one, right? There's plenty of other things you can come at me for. So, um, after that, right, in my argument, I gave specific examples for my example. So my example was lifting weights, but then I said lifting weights makes other things easier, and I gave examples for that. So most of you, I think, some of you, my guys and my girls, know that I work in an office. So after I squatted 260 pounds, can I sit in at the office and do my job? Can I sit and do the job that I was trained for? Yeah, I can. It just doesn't seem as hard as squatting 260. So I kind of do my job a little bit effortlessly, if you will. Or at least I do notice that I tend to get less stressed than other people. And also, I have a second job besides my office job, and I think I'm able to handle two jobs because I squat and do other lifts that are relatively heavy for me. So I'd like to think that I have more bandwidth compared to a person who doesn't lift. And then my other example is was being a good husband, because it takes effort to be a good husband. If I can wake up early and squat 260 pounds, right, I can do the things that it takes to be a good husband. I can be attentive to my wife. I can listen to my wife. I can give of myself to my wife. And the same goes for being a good dad. I can be attentive to my son, listen to him, give of myself to him. And finally, the last example I gave was that I can take a few minutes to pray. And honestly, for some reason, it's easier to go to the gym than to pray. In theory, it's easier to pray, right? But in practice, for me, going to the gym is easier. I think it might be an instant gratification thing. It takes way more effort to go to the gym than to pray. To pray, you could do it whenever and wherever. For example, sit on your couch, close your eyes, bow your head, look up to the ceiling, whatever you want. And you could just verbally or mentally pray. Compare that to my description of going to the gym. Remember, you have to, if you have a job like me, you have to change into your gym clothes, you have to get in your car, drive there, then you have to do the thing, then you have to either shower and there at the gym, or you have to come back home and shower and go about the rest of your day. It takes a lot of effort, compared to what? Just you can pray wherever and whenever. But most of the time, I get my prayers in as well. I was just talking with my wife, though, that for some reason on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, my prayer life always takes a hit, and I pray less on those days. So I'm just mentioning this to be honest with you, my guys and my girls. So let me know what you think, my guys and my girls. Do you understand philosophizing a little bit better after listening to this? Yes or no? And why? Do you understand reasoning a little bit better? We consulted the almost omniscient Google for a definition. The same goes for conviction. Do you understand what conviction means a little bit better? What about assertions? Do you understand that a little bit better? Do you see how some of us can assume our assertions are obviously true? What about my argument and the examples that I used for this, my first Friday philosophy on my Instagram? Were they good? Were they not good? What do you think? Let me know. How? That's a great question. Please send me a DM on Instagram at Dani_flow, DANI_FLO. Comment below if you're watching on YouTube. Send me a snap if you've added me on Snapchat. Send me a voice message on Anchor. The link to that is below. However you, my guys and my girls, want. The link to support Dani Flow Podcast financially is below. Please consider it if you like this podcast and you want to add a monetary value to it. If not, that's totally cool. No pressure. Keep listening, please, and share my podcast with your bestie and your nextie bestie. please share it on your Instagram stories and subscribe or follow my podcast and YouTube channel so you know when I upload a new episode on both or either platforms. Thanks for putting up with me. I'm aware that I'm weird, but you like it. So let me know what you think. We're a fan of thinking here on the Dani Flow podcast. We like thinking here on the Dani Flow podcast. So please share your thoughts with me. As always, my dear and beloved Dani Flowist, remember what venerable servant of God, Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen taught us. Your life is worth living. Love you guys. Bye.